jump right into it. I just have a few opening remarks that I wanted to share about Latin America, kind of a panoramic view of the region that we're at tonight. And so as I put on the screen, and I teach a Latin American history and civilization course, we know that it's impossible to group into a single culture. We speak of cultures when we talk about Latin America, and that is because this is an incredibly diverse region. I apologize for the accents on my slides. I have it in Spanish, so when I type it in English, they still show up sometimes. But we speak of very, very different, very diverse region. So we have diversity in linguistically, culturally, geographically, certainly racially and ethnically, in questions of faith, politically, socioeconomically. When it comes to diasporic people from different areas immigrating to Latin America, as well as gastronomically. So just an overview of the region, and now a few more. Welcome everyone that's coming in. We want to just take a look at the geography briefly. We're talking about the region from the Rio Grande down to Patagonia, and that includes parts of the Caribbean. You know that there is 2.5 times the total area of land compared to the United States. So some of the physical differences that we can observe in looking at the region of Latin America, the Andean mountain range that runs the full length of South America on the western side, the tropical rainforest in the Amazon basin, the deserts of Mexico and northern Chile, and then the grasslands of Argentinian Pampa, to name just a few of the very diverse parts and regions of Latin America. Politically, we talk of an organization that we have, CELAC, the Community of Latin American Countries. And so to give us an idea of the number of countries that we're talking about, CELAC is an intergovernmental mechanism for dialogue and political agreement. So they count a total of 33 member countries in the region that include part of Latin America. Certainly in this region, there's a very deep linguistic diversity. Prior to the arrival of the Spaniards, we had over 2,000 indigenous languages present in the area that is now considered Latin America. Of those, 560 still exist, and many are being preserved and studied. The university in Mexico that I taught at, it's possible to do graduate work in Nahuatl, one of the indigenous languages of Mexico. We certainly have a lot of Spanish speakers in the region. We have over 400 million. And then also we have just a wealth of other indigenous European languages that are spoken within the Latin American regions. We have Quechua, 8 million speakers, 6 million speakers of the Mayan languages. Guarani, we have 5 million speakers, and that's also an official language of Paraguay. Aymara, 2.5 million speakers. Nahuatl, 2 million. We have 5 million English speakers, 2 million German speakers, and 1.5 million Italian speakers. So just a wide range of languages spoken. Certainly, Latin America is a very diverse ethnically and racially as well. We had many vast indigenous civilizations in different parts of Latin America in pre-Hispanic times. Europeans that came to the Americas were already very diverse prior to coming to this part of the world. And so as we look kind of at different groups of people that have come to Latin America, we have, or that were already here, we have diverse indigenous groups, peoples from African nations, European nations, Asian countries, and people from the Middle East as well. So, and lastly, I would be remiss if I didn't touch upon food. If you ever take a course with me, I talk about food a lot. We do not all eat spicy foods nor tortillas. And so that's kind of customary in many parts of Mexico and Central America, where chiles are customary in the food, and it's kind of the spicier the better. But other parts of Latin America do not use tortillas. For example, the Caribbean does not use tortillas hardly at all. It's more common to find cassava bread. Would be probably the closest we have to tortillas. And then as we move through the different parts of Latin America, we find that food is a bit more bland, not as spicy, and that a lot of geographic contributions and variances exist. And examples of that may be in the Altiplano of Bolivia, for example. Potatoes and vegetables are common in dishes, whereas in coastal regions, you find more dishes that have fish and other things you would find in closer to the ocean and water regions. So with that, I'm excited to introduce our first speaker. We're going to first hear from Dr. Robbie Mueller, who comes to us from the School of Pharmacy. And Dr. Mueller, you have the privileges to share your screen, and so we look forward to hearing from you.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. As Professor Gunderson said, my name is Robbie Mueller. I'm an associate professor of pharmacy practice within the School of Pharmacy. So I am a clinical pharmacist also. So I teach in the School of Pharmacy, and then I still work as a clinical pharmacist at St. Joseph's Hospital in Milwaukee. I'm the internal medicine floor of that hospital. So the kind of pharmacy life and kind of brain I have is one kind of part, but I also have this huge part of my life and kind of other half of my brain that is in love with all things kind of Spanish and Latin America. And my bachelor's degree is actually in Spanish and Portuguese studies. So I teach a medical Spanish for pharmacists elective, actually. But what Dr. Gunderson asked me to talk about today was specifically Peru and pharmacy practice within Peru. I thought I could start off, though, by talking a little bit about just kind of my overall experience through Latin America, and then touch briefly on kind of my personal and professional experiences, specifically within Peru. And then the kind of bulk of the presentation will be on pharmacy practice in Peru. And I thought we could end with, why I think it's important to engage with Latin America, and then a couple specific examples of how we within the School of Pharmacy actually try and engage with Latin America. Without further ado, my first experience in Latin America in 2002 really changed my life, and I don't mean to exaggerate that at all, but going to Puerto Rico in 2002 was the first time that I traveled outside of the contiguous United States. I went to San Juan with some high school friends and that family for 2 weeks, and really I fell in love with the Spanish language, the Puerto Rican people, their culture, history, food, and it really sent my life in a very different direction than what I originally anticipated. My next experience in Latin America was in 2004, where I was just kind of going as a tourist with my family to the Yucatan Peninsula. But that too further cemented my kind of interest in diving deeper into Latin America. I studied abroad in Spain in 2007 for a semester and lived with a host family. And while Spain obviously isn't part of Latin America, that experience further solidified my passion for Spanish and actually also provoked a desire for me to further engage with Latin America. So in 2010, when I was in pharmacy school, I went on a medical service trip to Quetzalán, Mexico, which is in the state of Puebla, and we set up different health clinics to test patients' blood pressure, blood glucose, and cholesterol, and then we gave them therapeutic lifestyle advice, recommendations for how they could change their diet or exercise in order to kind of improve their health from that standpoint. We also did some touristy things, like went to Teotihuacan to Sesame, with the moon in the background there. Went on that same trip again in 2011, went to some other small pueblos in the state of Puebla, and did that similar thing. And since we're in the state of Puebla, I had a lot of mole poblano and wonderful, wonderful food in Mexico. In 2012, in pharmacy school, I went with 2 other friends to Peru, and we did a 4-day, 3-night hike up to Machu Picchu on the Incan Trail. It was during the rainy season, so it was the cheapest time to go. It was also kind of the most dangerous and maybe most unpleasant time to go because it was just raining constantly. But it was still beautiful. So after 4 days, 3 nights, and a mudslide, we made it to Machu Picchu. So a little bit then about my personal and professional experience in Peru, starting with the personal. On that trip, then we got to spend some time in Cusco, the Sacred Valley. Obviously, we went on that 4-day, 3-night hike up to Machu Picchu, and then spent some time in Lima as well. And another kind of food picture. So Professor Gunderson mentioned food. I too love food. This is my favorite Peruvian dish called lomo saltado. So that was kind of my personal experience there. Further in 2016, I went for a more kind of professional standpoint within my role as a professor in the School of Pharmacy. I went with Dr. Castillo to both Peru, Lima, Peru, and Canoas, Brazil, to give some presentations about pharmacy practice and specifically hospital pharmacy at different universities there. And then also returned to Peru again in 2018 to give some more pharmacy-related presentations. So overall in Peru, I've given 2 virtual presentations, 3 live seminars, and 1 roundtable discussion, all as it relates to pharmacy practice in the United States specifically. So giving a presentation about pharmaceutical care to at a conference in Peru. And then I was part of a roundtable discussion about advances and challenges within clinical pharmacy from a perspective in the United States. Through that experience, kind of researching for those presentations and what I've observed firsthand and studied from pharmacy practice in Peru, I've been able to kind of compare and contrast a little bit the healthcare system and pharmacy practice in Peru. So I just want to share a couple kind of high points then about pharmacy practice in Peru. As far as their healthcare system overall goes, their overarching goals from a overall Peruvian health department are to promote health and disease prevention, citizen participation, access to health, and social security. So the kind of 3 main areas that they do that are kind of places that people can go for that are states, or kind of federal, state-run hospitals and healthcare centers, and then some private organizations. They then have kind of 3 corresponding different insurance plans primarily that cover this. So they have 2 big public plans and then 1 kind of private, or they have like private insurance plans too. So this SIS Health is kind of like our Medicare, Medicaid that aims at covering patients, vulnerable patients, and particularly those in an extreme poverty situation. Salud is employer-based healthcare, but at a national level, and still public insurance from that standpoint. And then they also have private insurance. So unlike the United States, the vast majority of their insurance then is kind of publicly financed through taxes, whereas just a small percentage actually of patients have private healthcare insurance and then go to private facilities, hospitals and clinics to receive care and medication. Pharmacy education in Peru is quite a bit different too. There are 17 schools of pharmacy in Peru as opposed to 144 schools of pharmacy in the United States. Pharmacy education in Peru is a 5-year kind of like bachelor's-like degree with a 6 to 12-month internship, whereas here in the United States, typically pharmacy education runs 6 to 8 years when you combine undergraduate prerequisites with a pharmacy degree, but everyone now in the United States receives a doctorate of pharmacy degree, so it's a doctoral degree. Peru relies heavily on the postgraduate education to specialize further with continuing education programs. Top 3 areas that pharmacists practice in Peru with their kind of degree in pharmacy is in the community setting, industry like pharmaceutical companies, and then hospitals. To me, pharmacy is probably the one that we're most familiar with, I guess, like here in this country, and then also it's the most common place to practice in Peru. There's a big difference though as far as like what a community pharmacy looks like in the United States versus a community pharmacy in Peru. In Peru, technically a pharmacist is supposed to be on site in order to dispense any medications. However, this law isn't followed super strictly in a lot of locations, so actually a lot of dispensing is done by technicians and assistants. And it's very uncommon for anyone within the pharmacy to provide either written information to patients or verbal education to patients about how to take medications, like how often, what to do about missed doses and side effects, things of that nature, although that information can be requested. The pharmacies do, though, play a very growing and important role in the Peruvian healthcare system. access is still kind of an issue. There are 10,000 community pharmacies in Peru, but about half of them are in the one city, the capital of Lima. In 2010, you can see that of the patients that sought some type of like medical care, at least the majority of them initially went to a pharmacy. So again, that shows the importance of a pharmacy, but since access can be a problem still, that's still a barrier to receiving some health care. But the growing role of pharmacists is to provide more and more health services, not just medications. I have a picture here of paracetamol, which is acetaminophen or Tylenol here in the United States. And I bought this while I was in Peru, and this is kind of how things come packaged in these little, we call them blister packets. You notice that there's like no instructions or kind of information about them. So again, it's kind of can be perceived as kind of dangerous from our standpoint that you know, we're used to in the United States individually labeled bottle of medication, right, with our name on them and specific instructions and exactly how many tablets are in there and how we're supposed to take them, where that is not done in Peru and honestly in much of Latin America. Another big difference between pharmacy practice in the United States and Peru is relates to medication beliefs and practices. So compared to the United States, there's a much stronger more prevalent use of herbal medications and home remedies. And Peru has a large indigenous population. The indigenous population especially has more of a blend use of both Western and kind of traditional practices. So why do I think it's important to engage culturally with Latin America? I think it can really increase our knowledge, our skills, and our traits. And for me personally, I think, you know, increasing your knowledge in languages, Spanish, Portuguese, a lot of, I mean, if you want to study the indigenous languages like Professor Gunderson was talking about, skills, I think it can really help you with communication skills, cultural competency and awareness, independence. And then for me, I know I experienced a lot of personal growth in dealing with empathy and patience and compassion. You know, when I, as a pharmacist, go into a pharmacy in Peru and kind of lost and bewildered and don't know what to ask for or what to do, if I can feel that level of, I guess, anxiety, I just kind of think of, oh, what if someone from Peru comes to the United States and comes to, you know, a Walgreens pharmacy? What are they going to feel like? I imagine it'd be quite overwhelming. So that developing that empathy, I think, is a huge thing for traveling abroad and experiencing another culture. But obviously, I really think that experiencing any place in Latin America would probably be a great experience as far as fun to meet people, enjoy the food, the language, culture, sites, what have you. So we do offer a couple different experiences within the School of Pharmacy in order to do that. I mentioned my medical Spanish for pharmacists elective, so that's specifically engaging with the Spanish language in pharmacy practice. But Dr. Castillo might talk a little bit more about this. He's kind of the lead for a couple different other electives. One that involves a 2-week trip to Peru to study traditional medicine and natural medicines in Peru. That also involves a trip to the Amazon. And then as well as a clinical rotation at a pediatric compounding pharmacy in Lima. And finally, within the School of Pharmacy, we have a National Hispanic Pharmacists Association chapter that is dedicated to improving the health of Hispanic patient populations here in the United States. So that's something that I encourage my pharmacy students to get involved with. I know that was kind of drinking from the fire hose, but Professor Gunderson, I don't know if we have time for questions now, or you're planning on taking questions at the end, but if we have time, I'd be more than willing to take any questions.
I think we'll wait till the end to make sure that we have time for all the presentations.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Mueller. We appreciate your presentation. That was very informative. So we'll move now to Vivian Silva, who is an international student here with us, who is studying an MPA in Management and Information Systems. So, Ms. Castillo, you have the, I'm sorry, forgive me, Ms. Silva, you have the floor and you have access to the screen share.
Okay, thank you. So I'm from Colombia, from Bogota, Colombia, the capital. Colombia is located in South America. We have Colombia is the only country in South America with two coastlines, which is the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean. We also have 10% of the Amazon jungle, and the capital of Colombia is Bogota. We have 32 departments in Colombia that are like states in the United States. The language is Spanish. We have Colombian pesos and around 50 million of people in Colombia. The education system is very similar to United States. Just we have a different scholar calendar, which starts in January and finish in November. We have 12 years of school, preschool 1, primary grades 5 years, and secondary school 6 years. Then we have like a technical school if we want to take a technical school, 2 years, and it's almost the same than here. The customs, okay, I'm gonna talk more about the holidays here. We have many holidays in Colombia. In 2020, we had 18 days of holidays, and most of them are Catholic, but everyone take it even though they are not Catholic. So we usually go to summer houses, and people just rent those houses, but they do it like most like every holiday during the year, so it's very typical. This is a custom, like a custom that we have in Colombia, but not everybody do it, but some of the people do it. So for New Year's Eve, some people use yellow underwears or red underwears to bring money, the yellow or red to bring the love. So that's like a funny fact. We also have the candle day, that is el Día de las Velitas. We celebrate that on December 7 every year. The idea is to light a candle and make a wish or be grateful for something that happened during that year. And we usually do that outside of our house and just spend time with family or friends. This guy here is el año viejo, el muñeco de año viejo, is like the old guy. So we put everything that is old for the year that we want to throw, and we burn that the last day for New Year's Eve. So the Colombian food, we have empanadas. The difference between our empanadas and the other countries is we fry the empanadas, so it's more crunchy. And here is the ají. This is like a spicy sauce, but it's not really spicy, it's just flavor. We have mojarra, that is very typical in Colombia. We found this kind of fish in rivers. Sancocho, we love soups, so we have many kind of different soups. And bandeja paisa, that is very, very typical here. We also have arepas that are like pupusas or gorditas from Mexico, but with a different flour. Okay, this is my favorite restaurant in Colombia, crepes and waffles. They have many different kind of dishes, and they have, like, as you see, salty dishes and also sweets, and you have to try it if you go there. About music, okay, we have a cumbia joropo that is very typical from our country. When we dance those kind of music, we usually use those customs. And the vallenato, which is the accordion, and is most from coast people, but everyone in Colombia knows about vallenato. Champeta is a dance from African people, like a mix with African culture and Colombian. Salsa, of course, merengue and reggaeton. We have two big carnivals in Colombia. That is the Carnaval de Barranquilla, is one of the biggest ones in the world after Carnaval of Rio. It's very colorful, and it's for 4 days, like continually. We have also the Carnival of Blancos y Negros in Pasto, and it's almost like same, but with a different meaning. The Carnaval of the Blancos y Negros was started in the 17th century because the slave people asked for a free day, for a day off, and they start like celebrating more days. It is for a week. Bogota is the capital, as I mentioned before. We have many technology, industry. It's like a city for opportunities. We have mountains, churches, like, it's very, very beautiful. The weather is a little bit cold, but not like here. And this is like an important monument of Bogota. Is a church that is located in a mountain, and most of the people have to visit that if they go to Bogota. Cartagena is like a colony city. It has a lot of walls around the city because in the colony age, they built those walls to protect the city from the pirates. Medellin is one of the most popular cities. This is Guatapé. This is La Piedra del Peñón, and it's most of the innovated cities now. Before it was very violent, like in the 90s, but now it's totally different. And in Meta, this is a department. It has this beautiful river, which is very colorful, and it could be the most beautiful river in the world. 100 kilometers long. And we also have a desert, the desert of el desierto de la Tatacoa. And yes, definitely you want to go there if you visit Colombia. We have more than 300 beaches in Colombia, in the coast of the country. This is El Parque del Tayrona, and was one of the most beautiful natural parks in the country. This is the facts. Not every zone in Colombia has the same weather. So, for example, if you are in Bogota, there is a cool weather. We are always about like 90 degrees Celsius. And you can just drive probably 2 hours and you will find like 30 degrees. So that's like really good for us, because if we want to travel, to go to vacations, we just have to drive a little bit, and we will gonna find a totally different weather. We don't eat spicy food at all. We drink sometimes. Some people think that is gross, but we like to drink for breakfast hot chocolate with cheese. And in our culture, it's very common to live with your family until you get married, because the rents and stuff is very pricey, and the average of salary is very low. This was Colombia like 20 years ago. We had a lot of violence. Most of the people recognize Colombia for Pablo Escobar and the fame that he created in us. But when you meet somebody from Colombia, we usually don't like or get offended when they compare us with Coke or this kind of bad stuff, because it's something bad from our history. And finally, this is why we are proud now from Colombia. I'm gonna play a video, a short video here. So yes, I'm from Colombia. I came 3 years ago as an au pair, an cultural exchange program, and now I'm here doing an MBA. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Silva. Wonderful presentation, very, very fascinating. I'm sure we'll have lots of questions for you towards the end. Thank you again for presenting to us. I apologize, I got kicked out of the Zoom for just a second, but I'm back now. So we'll move on to Dr. Doherty's presentation. Dr. Doherty comes to us from the Department of Political Sciences. We're excited to hear from him. Dr. Doherty, you have the control of the share.
Thank you, Dr. Gunderson. So as I just said, I'm from the Department of Political Science, and I'm a comparative politics scholar by training. And the region that I focused on in my dissertation and just in my general research, I'm still so fresh in the dissertation, so sorry if I refer to it that way, that I focus on Latin America. Specifically, I look at indigenous politics within the region. So my scholarship focus is there, but a case that's near and dear to my heart is Guatemala. And that is it's a country where I was fortunately able to travel to in undergrad, was able to travel across the country, was just really able to experience it and just dive in, was taken by the culture, taken by the geographic beauty of the country. And that put me on this path of like, I'm more interested in this country. But then because I had already committed to study abroad in Germany, I then went to Germany for a minute. Then I went back to Latin America for my graduate studies. So this is just a case I've been fascinated with. And so once I got to graduate school, I was able to win a grant at where I was at, which was at the University of Kansas at the time, to go down for a summer and do some Spanish training along with work in the historical archive in Antigua, Guatemala. And so when I was in Guatemala, I was able to go to, where are we at? In the Western Highlands region of Quezontenango, which is in the sense home of, in the heart of Maya country, part of Maya country in Guatemala. While there, I was able to was working on my Spanish. I was also just able to interact with the culture, able to go to festivals when it wasn't raining, because it was the raining season when I went, able to just experience market life, so on and so forth. It was a really great opportunity for me. And then I was able to go to Antigua, Guatemala, where that's where I had traveled previously, which is more of a touristy area, but it has the historical archives there in Antigua, Guatemala. So that's where I focused at. And then since then, I've really just tried to, that's been my focus, has been on Guatemala. But while there, it put me on this path of wanting to look at indigenous politics, because I was taken with this interesting case as a researcher of this. We've seen what's been going on in the region with the rise of MAS, the rise of Evo Morales in Bolivia, Correa in Ecuador. And that just put me on this pathway of like, what's going on there? Because within Guatemala, it's a massive, has a massive indigenous population, a very diverse population. So that's what put me on this path of just focusing on it. But before I jump in too much with research, that's what I'm prepared more of. I'll just show just briefly some of my picture when I was last down there. I'm totally gonna space on you all. Like, I cannot remember which volcano that is in Antigua. I think it's Fuego, but Fuego has erupted since then, so I don't remember for sure. And then just spacing on my names right now, but one of the older churches in Central America, just outside Quezontenango. And then I always love a campanata, which is one of the transportation systems that Guatemala has. And again, one of the fascinating things I was able to witness when you're down there is you get out of the airport, you perhaps arrange your own transportation, or you can take the camioneta, which is just a bus from the United States, actually transported down to from the United States, and that is part of the public transportation system. And they paint them up, as you can see here, and it was just an interesting aspect of the Guatemalan society as I was down there. And then here, just a quick pick outside of climbed up one of the volcanoes in Quezontenango in the Highlands region, and this is a picture just outside of there. So my focus, again, I'm going to talk a little bit more about my research, just really briefly, is, as I mentioned already, is I was intrigued when I was in Guatemala thinking about indigenous politics. And the reason was, as Dr. Gunderson has referred to, is that there are very large indigenous populations within the region, and especially in southern Mexico into Central America. And Guatemala is one of those, where the official estimate is 40% of the population is indigenous, but realistically, it's more like 50 or 60 based off unofficial estimates. And that's because of how the census is conducted within Guatemala. And so I was looking at, because MAS had been elected within the past decade. There had been some indigenous success in Ecuador, as I mentioned. And so I was just intrigued, like, what is going on in Guatemala that you're not seeing the rise of the indigenous party here, or more successful indigenous candidates, which is a little counterintuitive way to go at it, but that was just something that really stood out to me. And as I started looking at some of the data, I dug into one of the big surveys that is produced every year through Vanderbilt, University of Vanderbilt, which is the Latin American Public Opinion Project. And they had data available for Guatemala that allowed me to be able to ask the question, is like, is there support even for an indigenous candidate, for example, or is there support for indigenous politicians, indigenous political parties? And using both the 2012 and 2014 LAPOP, as it's affectionately referred to, is it found that, yeah, there was indeed, I found support for indigenous candidates, for indigenous parties within Guatemala. And so it's like, all right, I am finding that there is something here. There is this support that based off the data that was found, and that was across multiple ways of the survey, but yet we're still not seeing that much pull towards indigenous parties. And so that just put me down this pathway. It's like, what is going on in indigenous communities? And so when I started looking at various literature, it put me down this pathway of looking at what has gone on in Guatemala's history, and that tries to explain, which with Guatemala, as beautiful as it is, as wonderful as a place, it has a very dark history, unfortunately, especially in the past 80 years, especially because it had a revolution that overthrew a pretty horrific dictator in 1944, which it lasted for 10 years. It was actually democratic governance was occurring during this period, and it had this, they referred the 10 years of spring. It was not a perfect democracy, but it was where people were finally opening up. They were able to organize. They were able to have the recognition of freedom. Corruption was starting to subside somewhat. But then with the assistance of the CIA in 1954, there was an overthrow of that democratic government, which then led to a round of strongmen leaders through in Guatemala, then eventually led to the outbreak of a civil war, which was not borne by those that were fighting the war, but it was actually borne by the indigenous communities within Guatemala, especially in parts of the highlands region where I was studying. And so that's where I began focusing for this study, was like, all right, look at those big events and what tries to explain, how can that maybe explain and help us understand political organizing in the present? And what I found is that during the revolutionary period, and even after the revolution officially, say, ended, is that there was reforms during this period that allowed for indigenous organization to occur at the local level. And what this did was it built upon previous governing structures at the local level that allowed indigenous communities to organize and have politics of localness over, say, trying to get involved in national politics. And that's what I found, is that consistently, that's what you start to see in numerous Mayan communities across Guatemala, is that even though there's a very large Maya population, there might be this possibility for Maya organization that is just not occurring. What it is that they are focusing more on local governance. And that also captures, again, diversity, that captures and fits with the diversity that we see within Maya communities, because even though we all have been taught, there's the Maya, there's the civilization, but civilization that existed, it's incredibly diverse. Even within this country of Guatemala, which is 17 million people, there are 20, officially, I'm trying to remember how many languages they officially recognize, 21, 22 official Mayan languages. But even within those Mayan languages, there's incredible diversity. There are different understanding from town to town, and different understanding of what it means to be Mayan, or whether they used a language or not. So there's just incredible diversity within what we would say Maya, and that's because it's because of how they view themselves, which is more in relation to local community over, say, connection with a broader pan-Mayanism, which has become a more prominent movement, or with what it means to be Guatemalan. So that's what I've found, is that when there was opportunities for organization or political organization to, say, build more national level institutions, the decision was more focused on local level. So that's, in a sense, what I found there. But I would say there does seem to be some change. I don't know if you all follow Guatemalan politics closely at all, but there has there's been the rise of this Maya movement, which has not had a ton of success, because what they were trying to do is overcome those boundaries to localism. They were trying to build a more cohesive Mayan identity that can say we are part of we are connected, even though we have our unique diversity, our unique history based on our villages, our towns, our language, but trying to build that more cohesive identity that says we can demand more for the indigenous community in Guatemala, because the indigenous community in Guatemala is still discriminated against. They tend to be poorer than your average Latino or mestizo in Guatemala, and they're not able to use their indigenous language always. They don't have access to proper schooling, proper avenues of the state. So there has been this attempt to build a more cohesive Mayan identity, and there was you didn't really see that when I was really beginning to study this. Like, there was attempts to use this, take the Maya movement and use it for a political party, especially by the Nobel Peace Prize winner Rigoberta Menchú, when she built a political party and tried to run as a pan-Mayan candidate. That did not happen. But I would say in the past few years, you've started to see more demands by the Maya community and from the Maya movement. Guatemala elected a amateur politician, I guess I'm trying to think of the right word, Jimmy Morales, who was a comedian and ran for president and won in 2015. But he came out, he was very corrupt. Was taking money away from the state, enriching family members, a very typical story in states that don't have the rule of law and have not rooted out corruption. But what you started to see was protest against it, especially when he started to take action against institutions that were fighting corruption. The ones on the front line protesting him was the Maya movement. It was indigenous women leading the way in towns, both in Guatemala City, Santamango, all over Guatemala. And then you're also seeing just more protesting against actions the state has taken, whether that's cutting benefits or cutting back on anti-corruption measures. And what you're seeing is, I think hopefully, is that you're seeing the Maya movement now start to have made inroads in these communities to say, instead of focusing just solely on local politics, which is important, but to focus instead on what can we do to build democracy, build inclusion in the greater Guatemalan state. And that's what I'm just seeing contemporarily with Maya politics in Guatemala right now. And so, just to wrap up, that's just a bit of what I do with my research. Again, I find it very fascinating. Just to kind of reiterate what was said earlier, take the opportunity if you can to get to know Latin America. It's incredibly important. It's going to keep coming up for us, especially with migration is going to be a major issue. Where is migration coming from? It's often coming from the Northern Triangle region, which Guatemala is a part of in Central America. So just trying to better understand that what is actually going on there. Why do people feel the need to try and leave the situation? Usually it is related to corruption, to violence, to impunity that is rampant within some of these states in Central America. So that's why I do very much encourage you to continue just try to understand what is going on within the region. So I don't know where I'm at on time, Dr. Gunderson, but I think that's enough for now. So I'll take questions afterwards.
Sounds good. Thank you, Dr. Doherty. Great job. We appreciate your perspective and your presentation. Thank you so much. Move to Mr. Gian Pico's presentation next. Mr. Pico is an international student with us here who's studying the MBA in sports and entertainment business. Mr. Pico, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Before I start, I want to thank you all. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm always happy about sharing a little bit about my country and our culture. So I appreciate you inviting us to this meeting. I believe I for some reason I cannot share the screen. It says that host disabled, so you maybe are able to enable it. All right.
Should be able to now.
Thank you. All right. So again, my name is Gian Pico. I'm gonna be talking about my country, Ecuador. I will start with a little bit of background. We are located in Western South America. We are bordered by Colombia, Vivian's country, she just previously mentioned. On the north, Peru on the east and south, and by the Pacific Ocean on the west. We have around 18 million people, so we are a small country. Our capital is Quito, and as you can see, our flag has the same colors as the Colombian flag and also the Venezuelan flag. In our particular case, these colors represent the yellow represents the sun and the gold of the ancestors. Blue represents the ocean and the clear sky. Red represents the blood spilled by the heroes who died in the name of their country. All of these things we are taught when we are really little. We know this since we're in kindergarten, I believe. It's part of our national anthem as well. So we are always reminded about the importance of our flag and how to mention it proudly every time we do it. We use US dollars. Before we used to have our own currency, which was sucres. Before 2000, in the new administration in 1999, we were facing a economic crisis, a very important crisis. So the new administration decided to bring the dollars into the country, which didn't seem like a really good idea. It was thought that it was gonna get even worse, but thankfully, over the years, it became better, and we might be able to say that currently we are economically stable in comparison to other South American countries. The predominant and official language is Spanish, and as you mentioned before, Quechua also is part of the language still. Around, you mentioned 8 million people still speak Quechua. In Ecuador, around 2 million still do. Also, other pre-colonial American languages are spoken in the country and around South America as well. Economy, Ecuador was very well known for Panama hats, was a big export. The Panama hats are handmade hats, and well, you might be asking why it's called Panama hats if they are made in Ecuador. It has a little bit of history, but to make it short, basically in the 19th century, they started exporting to Panama while they were building the Panama Canal, and it was the #1 exportations there. Also, cacao is one of the biggest exportations. Probably most of the chocolates you eat, if you like sweet, the cacao, those chocolates are made probably from the cacao coming from Ecuador. Bananas, when it comes to bananas exportations, Ecuador is on the top. Also, Guatemala is one of the top banana exports. Shrimps, flowers, and petroleum as well. Very, very important for our economy. I can talk a little bit about food. Just not to make it too long because we have a lot of variety. I'm gonna stick to a specific thing that it's one of my favorites, and it's green plantains. It's pretty similar. The shape is pretty similar to a banana, but the process is a little bit different, and you can make so many things with that. And I will just show you some of the things that you can eat. I'll say the names. It's bolon, the little ball that you see there, it's made out of that. Some empanadas made out of the green plantain. So many different food just from one source. And obviously we have so many others. And that's how big the gastronomy is in Ecuador. So as you can see, this is the Ecuadorian map. We are divided into 4 regions. We have the Pacific coast, the Andes, the Amazon rainforest, and the Galapagos Island that you might be most familiar with. To move forward, I'm gonna mention a little bit specifics about each region and how they differ from one another. So the coast is composed of lowlands that extend eastwards from the Pacific Ocean to the western edge of the Andes and rise from sea level and elevation of 500 meters. I am from Guayaquil, which is in the coast. Our weather is tropical, pretty much stays the same throughout the year, with sometimes it's a little bit more humid, sometimes it's a little bit more hot, and in others, depending on the season, sometimes it rains, but it will never get nearly as cold as it gets here in Wisconsin. To move forward, we have beautiful beaches. That's one of the things I enjoy the most. I'm very close to those. We have so many of those, and this is good for tourism as well. We have one beach that is called Montañita. It's very little, but it's full of international people. It's well known for surf. A lot of tournaments are hosted here. The nightlife, it's incredible as well. So if you go to Ecuador and you go to Montañita, you might find a lot of people from the US, from Europe, all around the country, all around the world, sorry. If you live in the coast and if you go there, you're mainly gonna eat, or most likely are gonna have a lot of seafood, shrimps, as I mentioned before, lobster, crabs, fish, everything in different styles, different ways. Very, very rich. Moving forward, the Andes includes two high mountain chains and their western and eastern foothills. Quito, the capital that I mentioned before, forms part of this region. We have a lot of mountains. Just to mention a few, Cayambe, Antisana, Cotopaxi, those are one of the biggest mountains with snow peaks reaching almost 6,000 meters. And then we have the Chimborazo, which is a little bit over 6,000 meters. And there is a little debate of, it was once said that Chimborazo was the highest point or the highest mountain in the world, higher than the Everest, but it can be debatable. Here is a graph that you can see depending on the perspective. As well, I didn't mention, but well, Ecuador is named after the equator, which means we are in the middle of the world, so that makes the mountain be the closest to the sun. So in Quito, we actually have like another touristic place, which is the middle of the world. Here you can find the latitude 0. If you put it on the GPS, it's 0, 0. You're right in the middle, which is pretty incredible, and also another source of tourism. This is a beautiful lagoon also in the Andes. There are so many beautiful places, but I tried to make it brief, so not to make it too long. I chose one of my favorite places that now being away, being in the United States, every time I go back, I just appreciate it way more. I live most of my life in Ecuador, and I was not really aware of how beautiful and how much diversity we actually have. So now I appreciate it even more. We have this cableway in Quito, which is very high altitude, a little bit more than almost reaching 4,000 meters above sea level, and you can see the beautiful city. If the sky is clear, it's beautiful, and if it's not, it's also beautiful. The sky is clear, it's beautiful, and if it's not, it's also beautiful with the clouds there. We have also many touristic places. This is Baños, a lot of this is the tree house is called. There is a nice swing there, and then you swing and you're like right in the mountain looking over the city. Now, third region, the Amazon rainforest. This is very beautiful, and it has a lot of wildlife. It has around 800 species of fish, including 3 sorts of piranhas, 350 species of reptiles, more than 300 species of mammals, thousands of species of plants and trees, so it's very rich also in flora and fauna as well. If you go to the Amazon, you might want to go with some kind of guidance. So we still have some tribes. Taromenani and Tagareri are still tribes that they are actually protected by the Ecuadorian Constitution. They are kind of isolated of civilization. They live on their own rules, their own beliefs. They believe in nature. They communicate with nature, and some tourists are allowed to go, and they don't mind sharing their lifestyle, and it's very beautiful. There is many families there living together as a community, and they find a way to help each other in order to have resources to get food, water, all this kind of stuff. And the way they do it is by sometimes hunting, you know, like you're in the jungle, you gotta find a way to survive. That's pretty much how they live. Some pictures from the rainforest, very beautiful. And last but not least, the Galapagos Island. They are situated in the Pacific Ocean, around 1,000 kilometers from the Ecuadorian coast. Galapagos, its immense marine reserve, is known as the unique living museum and showcase of evolution. This is one of the main sources of tourism for Ecuador. A lot of people go mainly to the Galapagos Island. It's very reserved. People there really take care of the environment, the animals, and they try to, you know, make the tourism not to be too broad. They try to keep it a good number, so everything is in order, and they try to keep all the animals and the environment safe. Here is some of the many species that you can find in Galapagos. We have the marine iguana, the sea turtle, and when it comes to Galapagos, it might ring a bell. Charles Darwin. He visited to the Galapagos Island and had a resounding impact on the formation of this theory of natural selection, the theory of evolution. During his visit to the island, Darwin noted that the unique creatures were similar from island to island, but perfectly adapted to their environments, which led him to ponder the origin of the island inhabitants. So it's not only a beautiful place, it's not only a source of tourism, but it has a lot of history as well. Charles Darwin was able to alter scientific view on the biological origins of life. So as you can see, not the biggest country in the world, but definitely we have a lot to share, and I'm very proud of where I'm from. Here maybe it's a 1-minute video, maybe you can see it. I'll show it really quick. I hope the sound is okay. If not, let me know.
Everywhere I look around, love is in the air. Every sight and every sound. And I don't know if I'm being foolish. Don't know if I'm being wise. But it's something that I must believe in. And it's there when I look in your eyes. Love is in the air. Love is in the air. In the rising of the sun, when the day is nearly done. All you need is Ecuador, like nowhere else, all in one place, so close. Ecuador is all you need.
So this kind of advertising, it was around 5 years ago. They invest a lot of money on this. They bought the rights of All You Need Is Love of the song. We actually paid a lot of money to be in the Super Bowl commercial just to increase tourism, and it actually did. So yeah, it just shows a little bit more about the whole country. And that's it from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pico. Wonderful presentation, very informative.
Sure. So we have a few things planned for this semester. Our first event for the semester will be tomorrow. We're going to do our first conversation hour. It's going to be at 3 p.m. in Dr. Gunderson's Zoom room. And if you're interested in joining the club, you can send an email to Dr. Gunderson, and he will add you. And Anna, if you want to talk about the other events that we have planned for the semester.
Okay. Yeah, just wanted to say, if any of you guys want to have a little bit of Spanish conversation, whether you're a beginner or if you're more advanced, it doesn't matter. We would love to see you tomorrow at 3 o'clock. And we're going to have a couple other different events this semester, and we will be sending out dates for those very soon. We're hoping to have a movie night, a craft night, maybe some trivia and some other things. So just keep an eye out for emails and information about that. But I think that is all. And again, we'd love to see you tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Kayla and Anna. Okay, I'll stop the recording here.